The morning light over St. Augustine drifted like a soft veil, brushing against the white limousine rolling slowly through the quiet town. Inside, Emily Hart, radiant in her lace gown, tried to steady her breathing as the biggest moment of her life approached. Friends followed behind in decorated cars, waving, laughing, filming everything. It was supposed to be perfect, but what no one noticed, not the bridesmaids, not the driver, not even Emily, was the shadow moving along the houses behind them. A stray dog, thin, trembling, with patches of mud clinging to its legs. It wasn't wandering, it was following. With every turn of the limousine, the dog matched its pace, sometimes sprinting, sometimes pausing to catch its breath, but never losing sight of the bride's car. And in its mouth, something long, dark, and heavy swung with each step. When the limousine finally stopped at the stone steps of the church, the stray staggered forward, panting violently. Its ribs rose and fell like collapsing waves. Guests gasped, stepping back, unsure whether to shoo it away or feel sorry for it. Then the dog lifted its head, and the thing dangling from its jaw glinted in the sunlight. A leather bracelet, old, worn, and unmistakably belonging to Emily's groom. And just like that, the vows she thought she would speak only minutes later no longer felt certain. For months leading up to the wedding, everyone who knew Emily Hart believed she was living inside a fairy tale. At 28, she had built a gentle, steady life in the town of Willow Ridge, a small, peaceful community where people still greeted each other by name, sent pies to new neighbors, and decorated their porches every season. Emily worked as an elementary art teacher, beloved by her students and admired by parents for her warmth and patience. Her life wasn't extravagant, but it was full of color, kindness, and quiet joy. Meeting Alex Donovan had felt like the universe rewarding her. He was charming in a reserved way, the kind of man who spoke softly but confidently, and who always seemed grateful for even the smallest things. A hot meal, a thoughtful gesture, a day without rain. Emily often told her friends that Alex carried a certain sadness in his eyes, but she believed love could soften any hidden wound. And over time, she came to see him as the missing piece of her adult life. Their families adored the match. Her mother admired Alex's politeness. Her father liked his hard-working nature. Even her friends teased that Emily had finally found her movie ending. So when Alex proposed on a snowy evening in December, with fairy lights wrapped around the old oak tree behind her house, she didn't hesitate. She said yes through tears. The wedding planning unfolded smoothly. Invitations printed, flowers chosen, music selected. Emily spent hours crafting hand-painted place cards, adding tiny watercolor leaves to each. The night before the wedding, she barely slept. Not out of fear, but excitement. Everything about the morning of the ceremony seemed touched with gentle luck. The weather was perfect. The venue shimmered with morning light. The choir rehearsed harmonies that floated through the old church walls. Her bridesmaids fussed over her hair and veil, while her mother clasped pearl earrings onto her ears. Emily laughed, cheeks flushed with anticipation. Even Alex had sent her a text earlier. "See you at the altar. I can't believe this day is real." No one, not Emily, nor any guest, had the slightest suspicion that something was already unraveling far from their carefully planned perfection. And certainly, no one imagined that the first sign, the first tremor in the day, would come from a stray dog wandering the edge of her property. A dog no one recognized. A dog carrying a truth she wasn't meant to miss. The first time Emily saw the dog that morning, it was nothing more than a passing detail. The kind of moment most brides would overlook in the whirlwind of wedding day excitement. She had just stepped out onto the front porch in her gown, holding up the hem so it wouldn't brush the wooden boards. The house was alive with motion, bridesmaids rushing around with hairpins, her father pacing with tissues in his pocket, the photographer backing up to capture the perfect shot. Laughter echoed through the yard. The scent of fresh lilies drifted from the bouquet in her hands. But through all the brightness and noise, something still caught her eye. A quiet shape standing at the far end of the driveway. A dog, small, thin, with a coat of dark, uneven fur and a tail that hung low, not wagging but gently trembling. It stood half hidden behind Emily's mother's hydrangea bushes, its head lowered as if uncertain whether it should approach or flee. The morning sun fell across its face, revealing eyes that were strangely expressive, a little too intelligent, a little too burdened. Emily blinked, unsure if the dog had just wandered there looking for food or warmth. Willow Ridge had strays, but rarely in this neighborhood. Before she could take a step toward it, one of her bridesmaids shouted, "Emily! The car is here!" The limousine pulled up with a polished shine, distracting her attention. When she glanced back, the dog had already retreated a few steps, watching her from a cautious distance. Still, something about it lingered in her mind. She felt a faint, inexplicable tug in her chest. A momentary flicker of intuition, the quiet whisper that something was off. But weddings come with their own whirlwind of emotions, and she brushed the feeling aside. She smiled, lifted her gown, and stepped into the limousine. As the door closed, she saw the dog again, closer this time, standing directly in the path of the car. Its ears were perked, its chest rising in quick, anxious breaths. It stared at her through the tinted window, with such intensity that she shifted in her seat, unsure why it unsettled her. Then the driver honked softly, and the dog skittered aside, though it didn't run far. It simply repositioned itself, waiting, watching. When the limousine began to move, the dog followed, not limping, not wandering, but following, steadily, determinedly, as if it had chosen her. Emily leaned back in her seat, brushing away the uneasiness. Brides weren't supposed to start their big day feeling watched by a stray dog. She laughed it off when her maid of honor asked what she saw. But deep down, a small part of her wondered, why did it feel like that dog knew her? And why did its eyes look so desperate? The limousine glided down Willow Ridge's main road, its white paint flashing under the gentle sun. Inside, the bridesmaids chatted excitedly, fixing each other's lipstick and talking about the reception playlist. Emily tried to focus on their laughter, but her mind kept drifting back to the stray dog. She hadn't expected to see it again. But at the very first stoplight, there it was. The dog burst from behind a mailbox, panting hard, as if it had sprinted the entire block just to catch up. Its paws slapped the pavement, nails scraping slightly on the asphalt. Emily's heart thumped unevenly. "Is that the same dog?" one bridesmaid asked, leaning forward to look through the back window. Before Emily could answer, the dog did something that made everyone fall silent. It ran directly to the passenger side of the limousine and stopped beside the back door, her door. Then, it stood on trembling legs, lifted its head and barked. Not a wild, hungry bark, not a territorial bark, but a desperate, urgent, warning bark. Short, rapid bursts that echoed against the quiet street. The bridesmaids jumped. The driver frowned. Someone muttered, "Stupid stray." But Emily froze. There was something in that bark that didn't feel random. Something intentional. Her gaze locked onto the dog's eyes, dark, alert, fixed entirely on her through the tinted glass as though it knew exactly where she was sitting. For a heartbeat, Emily felt as if the world stopped moving. Noise faded. The only sound was the frantic rise and fall of the dog's breathing. Then, as the light turned green, the driver pressed the accelerator. The dog lunged forward again, sprinting, trying to keep pace. The limousine picked up speed. The dog did too. It stumbled once, nearly falling, but regained its footing and kept running. Emily's stomach tightened. "Maybe we should stop," she whispered, without meaning to. Her maid of honor scoffed. "For a stray? Emily, it's just hungry. Don't start getting sentimental today. You have a wedding to focus on." Maybe she was right. Weddings were emotional. Everything felt symbolic, important, heavier than usual. Maybe she was imagining things, reading too much into a lost dog's behavior. But as they approached the turn leading toward the forested path near Alex's house, Emily saw something that made her breath catch. The dog ran ahead of the limousine, then veered sharply toward the tree line, barking frantically and looking back at the car, as if it was trying to show her something, lead her somewhere. Warn her before it was too late. The driver didn't slow down. The bridesmaids resumed chatting. Life moved on as if nothing had happened. But Emily's hands grew cold, because in her heart, she felt it. That wasn't just a dog running. It was a dog trying to tell her something. The limousine drifted off the main road and onto the quiet, tree-lined stretch that curved past the Donovan family property. Tall pines formed a canopy overhead, filtering the sunlight into flickering patches that danced across the car windows. It was serene, almost too serene. A place made for wedding photos, not warnings. Emily leaned slightly toward the window, unable to shake the image of the stray, barking and sprinting toward this very stretch of road just minutes earlier. She pressed her hand to her chest, trying to calm the strange, persistent tightness there. But then, the driver suddenly braked, hard. The bridesmaids lurched forward with small gasps, grabbing the handles and each other. "What the—" Emily didn't have to ask. She already knew. The stray had appeared again, this time much closer than before, stumbling into the middle of the road, nearly collapsing as the limousine screeched to a halt just 4 feet from its fragile body. The dog stood there, legs spread shakily, sides heaving in uneven breaths. Mud coated its paws. Its fur was matted with debris, but its eyes, they were wide, frantic, filled with a wild urgency that made Emily's own pulse race. "Get out of the way!" the driver yelled through the window, tapping the horn. The stray didn't move. Instead, it barked, loud, sharp, cutting through the forest hush like an alarm. Then it turned its head sharply toward the woods on the right, the same dense grove that bordered Alex's family's land. It barked again, louder, tail stiff, body shaking, as if begging them to look, as if begging her to understand. Emily leaned forward. "Can you wait a second? Something's wrong." Emily, her maid of honor, warned gently. "It's just scared. It's a stray. You can't read into everything today. You're nervous, that's all." But their voices dissolved as the dog suddenly took off again, sprinting toward the woods, only to stop after a few steps and look back at her. Not at the car. Not at the driver. At her. It barked once more, then paced a small circle, restless, agitated, before darting toward the forest again. This time, it didn't come back. Emily found herself inching toward the window, heart pounding. The dog's muddy paw prints were left smeared on the road, marking a trail toward the tree line. The driver exhaled sharply, relieved the path was clear. "We need to keep going. We can't be late." As the limousine rolled forward, Emily twisted in her seat, watching the stray disappear between the shadows of the towering pines. In the shifting light, she saw it turn its head one last time. Just a silhouette now, before vanishing entirely. A chill swept through her. Something wasn't right. The dog wasn't running from danger. It was running toward it, and trying, with every last ounce of strength, to pull her with it. The limousine rolled the final mile toward St. Augustine Church, but the earlier warmth of the morning seemed to fade. Emily pressed her palms against the cool leather seat, trying to steady the tight coil of unease winding inside her. The world outside blurred into passing shades of green and gold, but her thoughts stayed fixed on the stray, its trembling legs, its frantic bark, the way it kept looking back at her, as if pleading for something. Her mind wouldn't let it go. Neither would the forest, because a few minutes later, something else happened. As the limousine approached the long stone wall that bordered the old Donovan estate, the dog reappeared again, this time not behind them, but ahead. It burst out from behind a low shrub, startling the driver so abruptly he cursed under his breath. "For heaven's sake! Is this dog trying to die today?" Emily's heart leapt to her throat. The stray wasn't running in circles now. It wasn't barking at random. It stood directly in front of the limousine, stiff, staring. Its body angled toward the same forested direction as before, as though marking a point, a location it desperately needed her to notice. The dog took several steps toward the trees, then looked back at her, forward again, back at her again. A pattern impossible to ignore. A signal. Emily, her maid of honor, murmured cautiously, "You're pale. Do you want us to stop for a second?" But before Emily could answer, the driver shook his head. "We're behind schedule. I'm going around it." He turned the wheel slightly. The stray reacted instantly. It sprinted toward the limousine again, barking with a raw, panicked edge that made the bridesmaids flinch. The dog wasn't attacking. It wasn't being aggressive. It was trying to block them, placing itself between the car and the road forward. Everything inside Emily screamed to stop. Her pulse raced, her breaths shortened. That tightness in her chest returned, heavier now, harder to brush aside. "Please," she said softly, touching the driver's shoulder. "Hold on." But her voice was drowned out by the sudden sound of another horn, from a car behind them carrying guests. The pressure of the procession pushed forward. The driver sighed, gave the horn a warning tap, and inched forward. The dog dodged the tire by just inches. Then, as if realizing blocking the car wasn't working, it tried something else. It bolted toward a small embankment off the road, skidding through fallen leaves and disappearing behind a thicket of ferns. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3. Then it reappeared, carrying something in its mouth. Something long, something dark, something that swung heavily as it ran. Emily's breath hitched. It wasn't a stick. It wasn't trash. It looked like leather. And the dog was running toward the church with it, as fast as its weakened legs would allow. Toward her. Toward the vows she was about to speak. The church bells of St. Augustine were already ringing in the distance when the limousine turned onto the final street. Guests were stepping out of their cars, fixing jackets and dresses, taking cheerful photos under the morning sun. Everything looked exactly as a wedding should, bright, warm, hopeful. But Emily couldn't feel any of it. Because as the limousine approached the front steps, the stray came racing out from behind a row of parked cars, mud flying from its paws, chest heaving violently, something dangling from its mouth with every desperate stride. The guests gasped. A few screamed. The dog didn't stop. It sprinted straight toward the bride's car, weaving between startled guests, ignoring the shouts and flailing hands trying to shoo it away. It didn't bark this time. It didn't slow down. Its entire body trembled with sheer exhaustion, but it pushed forward, eyes locked on one single place. Emily's door. "Drive! Drive forward!" a groomsman shouted, stepping protectively in front of the limousine. But the driver couldn't move. He stared at what the dog was carrying. A strip of leather, dark, worn, stained. The edges frayed as if torn during a struggle. Emily's breath froze in her chest. Because even from inside the limousine she recognized it. Alex's bracelet. The one he said he lost. The one he claimed he hadn't seen in a week. Her fingers curled instinctively around her bouquet. A noise escaped her throat. A soft, strangled sound she didn't even recognize as her own. Suddenly, the stray collapsed, right there in front of her door, dropping the bracelet onto the pavement with a dull, sickening thud. Its legs buckled. Its ribs shuddered with each breath. Mud streaked its fur like old scars. "Oh my God! Someone take it away! It's ruining the photos!" a distant voice complained. But Emily didn't hear them. She heard something else, something deeper, an instinct that rose inside her like a cold wave. She pushed the car door open before anyone could stop her. The sudden motion startled the crowd. Her bridesmaids shouted her name. A photographer dropped his lens cap. But Emily moved slowly, deliberately, her veil sweeping across the air like a ghost of hesitation. She knelt beside the dog, gently, almost reverently. She reached for the bracelet lying beside its muzzle. Her fingers brushed the leather, and something warm smeared across her skin. Red, thin, fresh. Blood. Her heart clenched. From the dog, or from somewhere else? The stray whimpered softly, nudging the bracelet closer with its nose, as if trying to make her see, really see, what it had carried all this way. Emily looked toward the church door, where Alex was supposed to be waiting. But a new fear crawled up her spine. If the dog had this, if it had followed her so far, if it had risked everything to reach her, then what exactly was waiting for her inside that church? And what truth had she been walking toward blindly? The moment Emily lifted the bracelet into her hands, a shiver traveled through her entire body. The leather was colder than it should have been, and heavier too, as if it carried more than weight, as if it carried a story she wasn't prepared to hear. She traced the familiar pattern along the edge, tiny notches that Alex himself had carved years ago to mark each significant moment with his late father. His initials were pressed into the inside. She could still feel the imprint beneath her thumb. There was no doubt, no possibility of mistake. This was Alex's bracelet. The one he said he lost while packing up his office. The one he insisted he would find eventually. The one he brushed off like it didn't matter. But it mattered. It mattered deeply. Because now, under the golden morning sun, Emily saw what she had missed before. The bracelet wasn't just dirty. It was smeared with a rusty streak of dried blood and fresh mud. The leather had been torn at one end, as if forcefully ripped from her wrist. On the inside of the band, she noticed something else. A hair. Short, brown, curled at the end. Her breath trembled. Alex's hair was exactly that color. Guests began murmuring. "Is that blood? Where did the dog get that? Is she okay? Should we call Alex?" Their voices swirled around her, distant, muffled, as though she were underwater. Emily stared at the stray, its body still shaking from exhaustion. Its tail lay flat, unmoving, its amber eyes lifted toward her, filled with something she could only describe as pleading. "Why?" she whispered. "Why bring this to me?" The dog whimpered, a soft, aching sound, and nudged the bracelet again with its nose, pushing it closer to her trembling hands. It wasn't random. It wasn't coincidence. It was intentional. Her instincts screamed louder than her fear. This dog had seen something. Something involving Alex. Something it had chased her all morning to warn her about. Emily slowly stood, clutching the bracelet to her chest. Her gaze drifted toward the church entrance, where guests were beginning to gather, wondering why the bride wasn't coming inside. Inside those doors, she was supposed to walk toward her future. But now she wondered. Was Alex inside at all? And if he was, in what condition? Her pulse hammered in her ears. The vows she had rehearsed 1,000 times suddenly felt like they belonged to another reality, a life she was no longer sure she was meant to step into. For several long seconds, Emily stood frozen on the church steps, her veil fluttering in the breeze, her fingers tightening around the blood-stained bracelet. Guests whispered anxiously, unsure whether to approach her or give her space. The scene felt suspended in time, a bride, a stray, a piece of leather that didn't belong on a wedding morning. Then the dog moved. It pushed itself shakily onto its feet, wobbling at first, but forcing its legs to hold. Its breathing was shallow, but its determination was unmistakable. It looked at Emily, directly, intensely, then turned its head toward the narrow road leading back to the forest. And it barked. Once, short, urgent. Then it walked a few steps, glancing back over its shoulder. Another bark. Emily felt something deep inside her shift, a pull, a tug, an instinct older than logic. Her heart hammered against her ribs. "Emily!" her mother called softly from behind. "What are you doing?" Emily didn't answer, because she didn't know. She only knew that the dog wasn't done, and whatever it needed to show her, it was important. The stray limped farther down the path. Its legs trembled, but it refused to stop, looking back at her after every few steps to make sure she followed. A hush fell over the crowd. "Someone get animal control," a guest muttered. "Maybe it's dangerous," another said. But Emily heard none of it. Her entire world had narrowed to the thin, exhausted creature, fighting its way toward the tree line. The same forest the dog had tried to lead her to earlier. Her maid of honor grabbed her arm. "Emily! Don't go! This is crazy!" Maybe it was. But then she looked at the bracelet again, at the torn leather, at the blood, at the hair caught inside the stitching, and something inside her spine straightened. "No," Emily whispered. "Something's wrong." She lifted the hem of her dress, ignoring the gasps around her, and started walking. Slowly at first, then faster, following the dog as it disappeared around the bend. "Emily!" her mother shouted, but she didn't stop. The stray, hearing her footsteps behind it, wagged its tail once, the first sign of relief it had shown all day, then pushed itself into a limping trot, guiding her away from the church and deeper toward the towering pines. Each step took her further from the life she thought she was about to begin, further from the vows, further from the perfect wedding day, and closer, unbearably closer, to the truth the dog had risked everything to bring her. The deeper Emily followed the dog into the woods, the more the world behind her faded. The voices of guests, the ringing church bells, even her mother's desperate calls. Only the rustling leaves and the stray's uneven breathing remained. Sunlight pierced through the canopy in trembling beams, illuminating swirls of dust and pollen hanging in the air like suspended secrets. The dog kept glancing back to ensure she was still following, its tail low but determined. Every few steps, its legs threatened to buckle, but it pushed on with a fierce will that made Emily's throat tighten. Then she smelled it. A faint metallic scent drifting through the trees. Blood. Her steps slowed. Her heart didn't. "Hello," she called out, her voice cracking. "Is anyone here?" No answer. Only the dog, now standing at the edge of a small clearing ahead, its body frozen stiff, its ears pricked forward, its gaze fixed on the ground in front of it. Emily hurried toward it, navigating fallen branches and tangles of roots, gripping her dress to keep from tripping. When she reached the clearing, her breath left her lungs entirely. The ground was torn apart, earth clawed open, as if two bodies had crashed violently into it. Pine needles were scattered, small branches snapped clean, the signs of a struggle unmistakable. On a nearby rock, something dark glistened. Emily stepped closer. Blood. Fresh enough to shine in the light. Her chest tightened. The world tilted. "Alex," she whispered, her voice barely audible. The dog sniffed around the torn earth, pacing anxiously, following the scent with frantic movements. Then it stopped abruptly at a bush whose leaves were stained in the same reddish-brown streaks seen on the bracelet. Emily pushed the branches aside with trembling hands. Footprints. deep, uneven, dragging marks beside them. Someone had been pulled, or had stumbled while trying to escape. Her vision blurred for a moment. Fear, shock, realization. This wasn't just an accident. This was a fight. The stray barked sharply, jolting her back. It moved ahead, following the trail, urging her on. Emily swallowed hard, wiped the tears forming in the corners of her eyes, and forced her feet to move again. Because now she understood. The dog wasn't leading her away from her wedding. It was leading her towards someone who needed her. Someone who might be hurt. Someone she loved. Or someone she wasn't ready to face. The trail grew clearer the farther Emily followed it. Crushed leaves, disturbed soil, streaks of mud smeared across tree trunks at shoulder height. The kind of marks left by a person desperately trying to stay upright. The kind made during panic or fear. The stray pushed ahead, its nose close to the ground, whining softly as it tracked the scent. Emily's wedding shoes were ruined, her gown snagging on branches, but she barely noticed. Her pulse thundered in her ears. Every step deeper into the forest felt like stepping further into a truth she had never imagined could exist beneath the surface of her perfect wedding morning. Then she saw it. A torn piece of white fabric caught on a thorn bush. At first, she thought it was part of her dress. But no, the material was different, thicker, more rugged. Her breath hitched as she reached out and recognized it immediately. Alex's dress shirt. Half a foot away, buried under scattered pine needles, lay another fragment, a button, ripped clean off, still attached to a thread. Emily's knees weakened. This wasn't just a struggle. This was violent. "Alex!" she shouted, louder this time, voice breaking. "Alex!" Silence swallowed her call. The stray barked sharply and ran toward a fallen log. Emily hurried after it, heart slamming painfully against her ribs. The dog squeezed through a gap beneath the trunk, sniffing frantically, then backed out and looked at her, tail low, ears pinned back. Emily crouched down and peered under the log. Footprints again, deeper now, spaced irregularly, as if someone had been dragged through the narrow passage. The trail continued on the other side, leading toward a steeper slope, descending into the older, darker part of the forest. For a moment, everything inside her screamed to turn back, to go to the church, to cling to the safety of denial. But then she saw something half buried in the dirt, an object she recognized instantly. Alex's phone, screen cracked, battery scraped, still smeared with the same mud she found on the bracelet. Her breath trembled. What had happened out here? Who had Alex met? And why had he lied about losing the bracelet in his office? The stray nudged her hand gently, as if telling her she couldn't stop now. Emily wiped her face with the back of her trembling hand. She stood. She followed. Because the truth was no longer a vague fear. It was a trail the dog had already bled to reveal. And somewhere ahead, at the end of it, whether alive or broken, was Alex. And the answer to everything. Emily didn't know how long she had been walking. Minutes? An hour? Time in the forest stretched strangely, bending under fear and adrenaline. Her wedding gown, once pristine, was streaked with mud and torn by branches. The bouquet had long since fallen, somewhere behind her. Yet she kept moving, guided by nothing but instinct, and the stray dog limping faithfully beside her. The slope ahead opened into a shallow ravine. The dog barked once, sharply, then hurried forward despite its exhaustion. Emily followed, sliding down the last stretch of dirt, and froze. At the base of the ravine, half hidden behind a fallen tree, lay a man. Alex. Her heart fractured. "Alex!" she cried, stumbling toward him. He was conscious, but barely. His shirt was torn open, skin bruised in violent blotches. A gash across his eyebrow still bleeding. Dirt streaked his face. His breathing was shallow, irregular, each inhale a quiet struggle. He tried to lift his head. Emily! She fell to her knees beside him, hands shaking as she cupped his face. Tears blurred her vision. What happened? Who did this? Why didn't you? Her words tangled into sobs. Alex closed his eyes, shame etching itself into every line of his face. I didn't want you to see me like this, he whispered. What does that even mean? Emily demanded softly. Why were you out here? Why didn't you tell me? His throat worked. He swallowed painfully. I owed money, Em, she stiffened. To who? A man I used to work with. I thought I could handle it before the wedding. I met him last night. I told him I couldn't pay yet. He shuddered. He didn't take it well. Emily's breath hitched. The bracelet? He ripped it off when he grabbed me, Alex said weakly. I tried to run. He chased me into the woods. I must have fallen. Hit my head. I don't remember what happened next. But Emily did. She looked at the stray, standing a few feet away, sides heaving but eyes bright with fierce protectiveness. It found your bracelet. It followed my car. It led me here. Alex blinked, confused, then turned slowly to look at the dog. The stray stepped forward, tail low, ears back, not fearful, but gentle, as though it understood it was finally being seen for what it was. Their unexpected guardian. Emily placed a trembling hand on Alex's shoulder. You should have told me, she whispered. I was ashamed, he murmured. I didn't want you marrying someone who couldn't even protect himself. She felt something shift inside her, pain, disappointment, but also clarity. Their life together couldn't be built on secrets, not on lies, not on debts hidden until the world tore them open. And yet, here she was, here he was, alive, because of a dog no one had noticed. A silence settled between them, heavy, but strangely healing. Emily brushed the dirt from Alex's forehead and sighed shakily. We'll deal with everything, she said softly. But from now on, no more secrets. Alex nodded weakly, tears forming in his eyes. Then Emily turned toward the stray. It took a single hesitant step toward her. Emily reached out her hand. Thank you, she whispered. The dog lowered its head into her palm. And in that moment, with the forest quiet around them and the morning sun breaking through the ravine, she realized something. This broken, trembling creature hadn't destroyed her wedding day. It had saved her future. 2 weeks later, the wedding dress still hung in Emily's closet, unwashed, torn at the hem, speckled with dried mud. A relic of the day she thought would become her beginning, and in a strange way, it still was. Just not the beginning she expected. Willow Ridge had changed in those 2 weeks. News of the wedding day rescue spread quickly through the small town. Neighbors who once gossiped about cake flavors and flower arrangements now spoke about the stray dog with something close to reverence. People left bowls of food on their porches. Some lit candles in quiet gratitude. Others simply said they would never look at a stray animal the same way again. Alex was recovering slowly. His injuries, though painful, were not life-threatening. Physically, he healed. Emotionally, he carried a quiet heaviness, but also a new honesty. He confessed everything: the debt, the fear, the shame, the desperate attempt to fix everything alone. For the first time in their relationship, nothing was hidden. Emily didn't forgive him instantly. Healing took its own time. Trust had to be rebuilt with the same care she taught her young students to rebuild a fragile sculpture, patiently, piece by piece. But the one healing the fastest was the stray. Emily had taken him home after the vet treated his wounds. He had been severely dehydrated, underweight, covered in old scars, and carrying a fresh bruise near his ribs from the night Alex fled through the woods. Yet the moment he stepped into Emily's living room, he curled up beside the sofa and slept for nearly 10 straight hours, as though, after everything, he finally felt safe. Emily named him Scout, and Scout lived up to the name. Loyal, watchful, quietly brave. Some nights, Alex would sit on the floor beside the dog, staring into its amber eyes, as if apologizing for the world that had hurt them both. Some mornings, Emily would wake to find Scout sleeping at her bedroom doorway, as though guarding her from any shadows of the past that might try to creep in. One evening, a gentle rain tapping against the windows, Emily brewed tea while Scout rested at her feet. Alex sat on the couch, a blanket over his knees, still moving gingerly, but with far more color in his face. "Do you ever think about how close we came to losing everything?" Alex asked quietly. Emily looked at Scout, at the dog who had followed her limousine across town, who had dragged a bloodied bracelet through the forest, who had refused to give up until she followed him. "Yes," she said softly. "And I think someone was looking out for us," Alex swallowed. "I don't deserve another chance." "But I want to earn it." Emily sat beside him, resting her hand on Scout's back. "Then start here," she whispered, "with honesty, and with him." Scout lifted his head, tail tapping the floor once, gently. The moment felt small, but inside that smallness was a beginning, quiet, fragile, full of promise. Weeks later, a photo began circulating online. Emily in casual clothes, smiling with Scout beside her, his fur now glossy under the afternoon sun. The caption read, "The dog who led a bride to the truth, and gave her a new life instead." Some called it fate. Some called it instinct. Some called it a miracle. But Emily simply called it the day her story changed, thanks to a stray who refused to let her walk into a future built on secrets. In the end, Emily realized something that so many of us forget. Sometimes the truth doesn't come in words, or warnings, or perfect timing. Sometimes it comes in the shape of a trembling creature who refuses to let you walk into the wrong life. Scout didn't speak her language. He didn't know her plans, her dreams, or the vows she thought she would say. But he knew danger. He knew fear. And more than anything, he knew she needed to be led toward the truth, not away from it. Sometimes heroes don't shout. Sometimes they don't wear badges or stand in the light. Sometimes they limp through the dark and simply hope you follow. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Because every paw print carries a story. Every heartbeat has a purpose. And somewhere out there, another silent hero is waiting to be found. Not all angels have wings. Some walk beside us on 4 trembling paws.